This episode of The Substance is brought to you by Creatively Christian. Find the show on all podcasting players or at youtube.com. You landed on The Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, joined here today by my friends and co-hosts, Trevor Aiken.
What's up?
And Vincent Edwards.
What's going on?
How we doing, fellas?
Oh, I'm stoked.
We doing good, man. Excited.
Yeah. Present company.
So,
Great.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Here at The Substance, we're a Christian variety show. Each week we talk for about an hour about something or several things related to Christianity, culture, or the arts. Sometimes I'm sure we're going to get into all the above today.
Mhm.
And then at the end, we share some shout outs about things that
only
we
right.
or our guests have been enjoying lately. So if you're a new listener, welcome. And if you've been rocking with us for quite a while, here we go. As you guys can see, we've got a wonderful guest here today. Quite a bio on this guy. We got poet, battle rapper, activist.
Boom.
There's the husband, father, of course.
Yes.
I got a teacher, MC,
Girl dad.
and
Represent.
by all the social media accounts, the Anthony Bourdain of coffee propaganda.
There you
What's
go.
up, guys?
There you go.
What's going on?
It's
very
So
true.
Anthony Bourdain of coffee. I'm sure if anybody follows you online, they're getting quite a bit of coffee content. How's that been going? Congratulations, by the way, on the video win.
Dude, that was like, I was trying to explain it to my daughter, my teenage daughter, who's
Who
like,
doesn't think all your accomplishments are amazing?
no. She just recently, like, she's a dancer. So like she goes to like, she's in like the dance program at her school, and today was their hip hop class. And she was like, I just learned these dances, and she named them and then did them. And I was like, those are the names? Those dances have names? I just thought that was just dancing, right? But they were all just like, 90s dances. And I was like, that's what y'all learning. That was cool. So then I just ran in a room and just did all of them. Just strung them all together because they're all our dances.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a 30-year loop. Everything's coming
Yeah,
back.
exactly. So I was like, they all are dances. So I smashed it, and she was recording, so she put it on her stories, and she was like, Dad, all my friends are like, who is that, and why is he better than all of us? It's like, it's my stepdad.
And
She was
who is
like,
that?
we live with him.
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah, she's like, I was like, oh, so I'm officially cool because her homies think I'm cool. So that's quite an achievement
There
right
you
there.
go,
I
man.
appreciate
There you
that
go.
part.
That's the vision
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. So anyway, I was talking to her about, you asked me about you said about the
Yeah.
coffee video. So I was telling her how my coffee friends, like the people that are like really involved in the industry, were telling me like, yo, this is a bigger deal than you think it is. Right. And I was like, I feel like it's a big deal because I know it's an international competition, but I'm like, you're probably right, because in my head, I'm thinking of it like, and I told my daughter this, I was like, it's like winning Scribble Jam. And she was
There you
like,
go.
what's that? I was like, exactly. I'm like, it's an international DJ competition. It's a really big deal
For the people who know what it is.
for the people that know what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like it's that, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, it's not like I'm not going to put it on my resume for people that aren't in coffee. They're going to be like, oh, great. You want a sprungy? This is on your CV right now? You want a sprungy? Cool. Okay. So I was like, nah, but if we're in the right context, I'm going to be like, yeah, I was 2020 coffee video, 2021, I mean, coffee video. You know what I'm saying?
That's what's up, man.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I want to get a couple of rapid fires out of the way. So we cover a wide variety of things in culture and the arts.
Mhm.
Recently, Matrix Resurrections dropped, and when we said,
Yeah.
hey, what should we be asking propaganda? A number of our listeners said, hey, ask him if he saw it and what he thought. So did you see the new Matrix movie?
I did.
What'd you think?
I liked it. Like, it's like, I liked it for what it is. I liked that it was self-aware, and it made a lot of jokes about being self-aware. You know what I'm saying? I felt like some of the messages it was trying to tell us was a little on the nose, you know, as far as like social media and distraction and, you know,
Sure.
being stuck. Like, I felt like it was a little on the nose, but I did like some of the like wrapping up of the story of the Matrix. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fun. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, this isn't Pride and Prejudice. It's like, wait, like, don't like leave him alone, man. Like, I feel like a lot of people were dragging it, but I'm like, that's because you romanticize your memories. And I'm like,
Yes.
I think a lot
it was
of people
amazing.
Revisited. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
It's really
amazing.
consistent.
Exactly.
It's tied back. They didn't
I
make
love
new
that it
stuff
tied
up.
back. I love that. But
Yeah.
I'm like, a lot of times people always do like that with like reboots or tied. Like some reboots are legitimately trash. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes it's just like you just remember it different. You remember the moment. You remember the time. You remember how it felt. So you're remembering this better than it actually is.
Yeah.
So then when you see it now, you like, I don't have that same feeling. Well, that's because it's not 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not
And
1999.
people did that
Yeah,
to the
and
original
because
Matrix sequels.
because Matrix existed,
Yeah.
and everybody did the bullet speed camera thing.
Mhm.
It got played out. You know what I'm saying? So now you can't read. It
It's
can't
impossible.
be brand new. Yeah.
They did a scene about how you can't do that in the movie. I thought
Yes.
it was.
I thought it was great. I loved how it was self-aware about that. Like, I love the twist on like the mental health thing to be like,
Sure.
no, bro, like, you know, I dug all that stuff.
Yeah.
About how like the main kind of architect bad guy is a therapist. It was super interesting.
The therapist and the tech bro are the bad guys.
Yeah. And that they're like, but that like they're convincing him he's paranoid and delusional. And like, because there was a moment in the movie where I was like, wait, really? Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, nah, that's a blue pill. I see that pill. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
Exactly.
about. Perfect. Nailed it.
So you're kind of a podcast extraordinaire with the iHeartRadio. I've seen you're on a number of their specials, like behind the insurrectionists or stuff like that.
Yeah,
and you talk about that a ton on Hood Politics, which is kind of my favorite way to keep up with what's going on right now.
Let's go. Thank you.
And
there's a lot of cussing on that.
I just want to know, like, there's a lot of different things that you can get into. A lot of things that that's true too. There's a lot of things that we see people who branch out into arts who are very artistic do a lot of things, but you really seem to have this knack for podcasting. I wonder what like got you into that. I found it also really interesting on the Hood Politics podcast. You mentioned that your kind of target audience, you were thinking about a kid in juvie who would be able to hear what you're talking about and understand that if they understand the things that they know, they can actually understand politics and how the world works too. So explain some of that. Like, what was your passion behind that? Why your heart for podcasting?
So podcasting started with Red Couch Podcast with my wife and me. And that was because the dudes at Relevant asked me to. Like, at first I was like, I'm down to do a podcast, but I was like, man, about what? Like, who's going to listen to me talk for? I was like, this is corny.
It's very humble of you, Prop.
Yeah, but I was just like, no one's going to listen to me. So then I was like, but they'll listen to me and my wife. Because I was like, our dynamic is interesting. And I'm pretty sure we can, just because of the cross sections of all the stuff that we're into, we could make something interesting. And Hood Politics was a section of that.
Yeah.
And then it just took on its own life. And that's how it landed on the iHeart. But I think the knack for podcasting, I feel like, because I taught high school and I taught in, a pretty rough neighborhood. And I was so young that I was like, I'm not going to send a kid to the principal's office. Like, I'm not going to, like, that's lame. You know what I mean? So in my head, I was like, and I'm not going to wrestle no kid in the, like, I'm not going to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm young enough to be like, yo, if you start trying to cook me, I'm gonna cook you back. Like, I'm gonna drag you back. Cause I'm like, I don't, this was in the time that you could roast a child. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be roasting no kids now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I was like, it was in my syllabus. Like, I'll roast you back. Like, I'm warning you right now, I'll roast you back, But anyway, my thought was, I just need to be the most interesting thing in the room. And if I can be the most interesting thing in the room, then that'll become my classroom management. Just be interesting.
Yeah.
So really, like, Hood Politics, and even when I came to iHeart and I was like, man, I don't know about, like, I'm not an interviewer. I don't know how to, like, go get I don't want to weekly try to find guests. And they were like, we kind of like it when it's just you. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah. So then I started thinking to myself, okay, if I were to do 20-minute lectures to these kids in juvie, you know what I'm saying? They're not going to do no homework. You know what I mean? I'm not going to give them no worksheet, but like, how could I get them to understand what I'm trying to say so that they could explain it themselves? And that's really the science for me of like podcasting is like, well, could you sit down and talk to somebody for 20 minutes? And if you could, they would have to be really interesting. So I try to like, that's kind of my theory about it.
I like that.
That's solid.
What kind of response have you gotten? Like, what kind of demographics have reached back out to you? And you've kind of gotten that active feedback, like, hey, like this is who we are and this is what we appreciate about how you go about it on Hood Politics.
It's crazy because it's just like all of my other sort of endeavors. It's across the board, man. Like that's always like the headache of my management team is like, who is this audience? Yeah, like you're all over the place. You know what I mean? And they all love it, you know, and they
like,
all love
that's success.
Yes. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But then it's hard to get those worlds to talk to each other. Cause like how far away is a single origin Yirgacheffe coffee, you know what I'm saying, from Ethiopia on a $5,000 espresso machine? How far away from that is Juvenile Hall? You know what I'm saying? But they're both me. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, and oftentimes I'm the bridge between those things, and I'm trying to continue to be the bridge between those things. But like the people that reach out are that spectrum of folks. Definitely people that are like curious. That's one thing I could say about across the spectrum. People that are curious, people that are willing to like, there are people that like, you know, actually disagree with me in a lot of areas, but like the way that I communicate, you know, and that's always refreshing. You know, on the Hood side, there was a little bit of confusion in the sense of just the name Hood Politics, which I'm using as a play on words because actual Hood Politics is the politics among gangs.
Yeah,
like how they relate to each other. And they was like, how you know Hood Politics? Like, you ain't even know, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, it's a play on words. And I try to like, once the name was like, oh, okay, cool, carry on. Because at first it was like, you false flagging, homie. Like, you ain't really out here. You can't be doing stuff like this. You need to take that down. And I'm like, bruh, like, first of all, have you listened to the show? You know what I'm saying? Number one. And number two, like, how you gonna, you gonna press me right now? Like, you know, just, right? But I was like proof of concept in the sense is like, I know how to answer you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want you to feel heard. I want you to feel respected. But I'm like, and that's the politics I'm talking about. Like, so after that, like, sort of like laying it out to the streets, like, yo, this is what I mean by it. You know, then I got the right cosigns and fools were like, oh, okay, yeah, we rocks with this. Like, he's a real smart dude. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome.
That's cool.
And that's the best kind of deal, right? Like when you're trying to put out thoughtful content, like, and then you have folks, like some of my favorite emails, frankly, that we get are like the folks who say like, I rock with you guys about like halfway, but like, I appreciate you and I want to learn, or it's like compelling. And I'm like, thank you. Echo chambers are dead. Like, if the last 6 years have taught us anything, like echo chambers are deadly.
Yeah, dude. It's frustrating, man. And it's super refreshing when I hear that. Sometimes there are times that like in the social media version of that where it feels a little condescending. I don't know if you ever get those where it's just like, hey man, I disagree with almost everything you say, but I like you.
But this one thing was good.
But it's like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, thanks.
Like and subscribe, I guess.
Yeah. I guess, right?
I like the
I'm glad you felt compelled to tell me that. You know?
Yeah. Was that really a compliment?
Yeah, that's why I'm like, you're stupid, but I like you. All right. Thanks, man.
Harsh. What have you found challenging about the content or maintaining the content of Hood Politics?
The consistency of like, you know, being there weekly. The check from iHeartRadio helps. Be like, you gonna show up every week. I'll tell you that right now. You know what I'm saying? So that helps. I think keeping it fresh, like, you know, not like kind of falling into a rut, just challenging myself to like always like make sure every show is an A game. Like, you know what I mean? Sure. Like one of the big challenges is like kind of phoning it in or like repeating something. But at the same time, not like, because I think that like this is one of the I think it's one of the problems of like modern sort of church pastoring or preaching is feeling like you have to have something new and shocking and exciting every week. And it's like, bro, it's just chapter 5 today. Like we was chapter 4 yesterday or last week. It's just chapter 5 now. Like, you know what I'm saying? And being okay with the fact that like, yo, today's not going to be a zinger where everybody's like, you know, posting clips and like, it's just like, so because when you do that, then you start scraping the bottom of the barrel and really saying nothing because you're just trying to like reach for the shock, you know what I'm saying? Rather than just being true to like the content, you know? So
we see that.
Yeah. So I think that like, that's probably one of the biggest challenges is to be like, always have something interesting, but at the same time, like not for the sake of just the spectacle, like allowing like the richness of the content to like drop, you know what I mean? Because some stuff is just boring and mundane, like, you know.
And that's life. And if you're covering life,
Dude, that's just gonna be like that. It's like, well, this week there's another filibuster. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I already explained to you what a filibuster is. So
here we are.
It's just still going.
Listen to episode 6.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. It's still happening. You know what I mean?
I loved your stuff on gerrymandering though. I felt like some of the explanation around that was like super, super clear to people. It's hard for people to understand.
All these things, dude, like I get these actually back to one of the things you said, like something that I get contacted from a lot is from teachers, like high school teachers, and they're like, yo, can you, like, we would love a clean version of this so that we can play it for our students, because sometimes we like these kids we teach and we're like, yo, this is like, we get like, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell these kids. It's just I can't play it in class. So I'm like, I'm going to try, like, you know, coming up soon, like I'm going to try to think of like 8 to 10 episodes that are like, this is evergreen content. Like this is a filibuster. This is a bill. This is a executive order.
Do a mini
like
series.
to do, like a mini series.
Rock.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's like, you know, World War II, World War I. How did this thing start? And just like something you can chunk and be like, all right, this is clean. Play it in front of your kids. Play it for your high schoolers. Here.
Boom.
That's going to be valuable.
Man, nice, I hope it works out.
Ready here first.
So, speaking of some evergreen content, I'm sure you're probably aware. I've seen some people posting about it, but in preparing for the show, I realized that it's almost the 10-year anniversary of Precious Puritans here.
Yeah, it is, huh?
Yeah, man, 2012.
Yeah, that's crazy.
A song that, unfortunately, is just as relevant today.
Yeah,
bro. I was when I did it. You gotta remember, like so that was off the Excellent record.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember exactly where CHH was and the reaction to that.
Yeah, you know, and like Humble Beast and stuff. We were underground rappers.
You were
like nobody knew who we were. You know what I'm saying? So even me putting this out, I felt like, man, everybody's gonna hear this already agree with me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like nobody, this ain't gonna be, nobody's heard of me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, this is, in my mind, I'm like, yo, this is low hanging fruit. Like anybody black sat in a church and heard something about Puritans, all thought the same thing. So I was like, this is controversial. How is this shocking? This ain't controversial. What are y'all talking about? You know what I'm saying? So I felt like I was the newbie inside of like reform spaces and like white evangelical. I was the newbie. Like I feel like I'm the guest. And I was more shocked that nobody else, like y'all don't hear this? Like how come nobody, like to me it was like, is there like, are y'all trolling me? Like really? Nobody's got anything to say to this, you know? So I thought like it was going to be one of those, huh? I didn't know it was going to get me canceled, you know?
Man. Well, what initially when you dropped that, what was that reaction like, and what was your reaction to that feedback?
I mean, obviously, like, you know, any press is good press. It was really interesting to me to see among evangelical spaces like that divide down the middle. And the part that made me, and then the reality of just like, y'all don't understand poetry, which was like another like shock where I was like, I feel like y'all didn't hear the point of the poem. Like, I was like, you understand that I compared myself to them at the, like, and I'm like, I'm just cocking the hammer back to drop for the big reveal. Like y'all don't understand. Like, so at first I was like, well, I have to explain things to you because you don't understand poetry. So that was my first thought. But when people who were actually experts in Puritans, in the Puritan histories, when they started reaching out and being like, he's right, guys. Like, that's what was super dope to me. Like, so clearly this was like the blogosphere years, you know what I mean?
Sure.
The pastor blog years, right? And they was writing like diss blogs to each other. And I didn't have to say anything because I was like, I said what I said. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And again, I come from underground battle rap. I'm like, deal with it. Like, I ain't got nothing to explain. I said everything I needed to say. You know what I'm saying?
And I felt like it was strong, but it wasn't ungracious.
Like, no, you said, because again,
yourself in there.
I'm talking about me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, but if the shoe fits, like, yo, like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like the Southern saying, a hit dog gonna holler, like, oh, you just got hit. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and you being so upset about it is like,
that should tell you
I
something.
rest my case. Like, and then so realizing like just how deep that went of like, you know, this guy Prop is encouraging young men to not read the Puritans and they're going to be stunted in their faith. And I'm like, you mean to tell me you believe that I am going to suffer in my walk with Christ if I don't read them people? I'm like, you got a problem. I'm like, sounds like you got an idol problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so to me, I'm like
Precious Puritans. You're not like, these guys are the scum of the earth. It's like, these were people, like, especially two reformed ears, right?
Yeah.
We got that theology of depravity, and we got that theology of sin. And then you're just like, hey, have you guys considered, like, in the way these guys sinned and were fallen, how that affects the social dynamic of the way you kind of pedestal these guys? Like,
I'm like, what? Why are they any different? And I'm just like, what? Like, why are you acting like they didn't reach some sinlessness? Like, what are y'all talking about? You know, so. And then so when I was like, you know, and like the point of the poem, like when I was just sitting on my high horse, like, man, I don't know why everybody quote them. They, you know what I'm saying? Like that. And then I was like, well, dang, people quote me all the time. And I know I be tripping. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, well, that's actually makes for some good poetry. So so that's kind of, so all that to answer your question of like how I reacted was like, it was really dope to see the actual experts in that era being like, kids got a point, and I don't know, and we've been trying to tell y'all, like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And then the theobrogans, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. The brosphere, you know what I'm saying? The IPA guys, like, they were just like, you know.
Yep.
And the thing, and I'm saying this jokingly,
because still working on them.
Got still working on them, because I like IPAs. Don't get me wrong, it's a good beer. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm like, I can't blame the beer for it, you know, but like,
or the beard.
Yeah,
I love that line. By the way,
the white boys with epic beards. It's like, I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you, that's a great beard. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but yeah, like, so that was one of the things, and then it just like, and I found that like in the long run, giving in some senses a sort of credence or sort of a respect to like the art form of poetry that like I feel like in a lot of ways ended up opening some doors, you know, later on to sort of a broader audience by being like, wow, this is actually very insightful, thoughtful work. These kids are smarter than we thought, you know. And it's like, well, kick rocks, bro. Yeah, we are. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right.
I think that this, even 10 years on, stands out as a gift to the evangelical church in that sense, because what it kind of pulls back the cover on is how people's theology is white.
Yeah.
And they think it's just theology. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, we label everything else as African American theology or Latin American theology. But like this is just theology, you know? This is theology 101. Puritans, you know, here you go.
Yeah.
And you're just like,
totally.
but what about this? And they're like, but that hurts when you say that though, because we don't think that about ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it's ahead of its time. Actually, you know, I listened to it a couple times today just to get fresh, and it reminds me of my experience because I didn't actually get into Reformed theology until about a couple years ago. And you brought words to what I was thinking, because it initially, for just a young man who's seeking to honor God, honor the church, and just learn more, you get mesmerized by the Puritans and the Protestant Reformation and all of these kind of things.
Yeah.
And then, but you do, like, as a black man, you're like, okay, but some of these, you start looking at dates in church
That's what
history, and
did
it's
it.
like some
You're
of these
just like,
things are
why
overlaying. You know what I
feel
mean?
like this
And
was the
so-
same time as that.
yeah,
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for maybe a young man or young woman of color who maybe getting to, you know, the church history and understanding more things of theology, and they're running into that, what would be your encouragement for them to
Man.
continue that study, but not to ignore the truth of history?
Bro, these questions, like, man, these questions are why I get up in the morning, you know, because I think, yeah, like the lure, you spoke to me too, like the lure of, you know, when you're a little more thoughtful kind of kid, you know, and you feel like in your home church experience, all that heart and soul is there, all that good orthopraxy, and, you know what I'm saying, sick and shut in, and understanding, you know, your place in the world and how you represent Christ in the world. It's all there, but you check in your brain at the door. You feel like you are, you know what I'm saying? Like there's no rigor. And then you get into these reform spaces and you like, there it is. That's the challenge I needed. That's the rigor, you know what I'm saying? And now your brain is engaged, you know what I mean?
Right.
But you coming in with the brain engaged, but with this 10, 15, 20 years of history with your heart and soul already engaged. You don't, so you bringing that in with you, not realizing that you sitting in a room who has never had their heart and soul engaged. They've only had their brain engaged. So you have this perspective, and it's like, it becomes kind of shocking when you're like, wait, y'all not at the food kitchen every Saturday? Like,
yes,
you know what I'm
let's
saying?
go
Like,
and do these things. Let's go and be the hands and feet.
And they're like,
Yeah,
whoa, that's not the gospel.
Study. Let's learn.
and you're like, what? So a lot of times you thinking, okay, well, maybe I can help bring that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe I can help y'all get there. And then you realize these people have no interest in your help. You know what I'm saying? And then you get disillusioned and leave, right? But what I would say is this, though, is, I mean, I just told you, right, exactly what it is. Right? That's it. Yeah. So, but I would say this is just like, is to remind yourself, our faith comes from the Sinai Peninsula. It ain't from Germany. That is 1,500 years later. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, you skipping, like, you gonna skip 1,500 years. So Christ died, Book of Acts happens, church spreads, and then church goes silent until Luther? Like, is that what that's kind of, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, what, you know, I'm like you're not following the maps. Even before you get out of the Bible, the gospel went south before it went north. You know what I'm saying? It went Libya, Ethiopia, Zambia, Mongolia, for crying out loud. This is 400 years of church history before Constantine. So I wouldn't like, and even the people you reading, your St. Thomas Aquinas, your St. Augustine, they are North African. Like, these are African people, you know what I'm saying? So I would encourage them just to be like, yo, like, hey, you gotta, you're studying a North African, Sinai Peninsula, Arab, brown-faced faith. You know what I'm saying? So everybody you reading in your Bible, like, they look like you. You know what I'm saying? And because of God's grace, it began to go north into like Asia Minor and the rest of Europe. But they're just a part of the bigger story. So if you could keep your head about that, to be like, none of y'all are special. Everybody put their own seasoning on it. That's that. And not only does that happen outside of the closing of the canon of the scripture, that happened inside the scripture too. Like, and that's the other part I feel
that's
like
a big part of it.
Yeah, that people understand. Like I take for example the book of Proverbs. If you read in the book of Proverbs, Solomon ain't talking to you. Matter of fact, Solomon ain't talking to the children of Israel.
First 9 chapters is just his kids.
He talking to his kids.
Like,
and not only that, and he talking to the gentry. Like, he talking to like royal kids. That he ain't even talking to you, right? Until you get to the Gospels. Now he's talking to Israel. And then when you get to the book of Acts and Romans, now it's talking to just humans, to just people as a whole. I'm like, God is retooling these, you know what I'm saying? So like, this is a great narrative. You know what I'm saying? This is a great practice that it just happened in Ethiopia. It happened, you know what I'm saying? So I would just encourage a kid to just be like, yo, remember you're studying a religion from the Sinai Peninsula. Like this isn't a European faith.
Yeah.
That's one part of a bigger body.
No, that's so good, man.
Man,
Yeah, man.
that's solid.
Just what you're saying right there resonates so heavy with some of the main themes I was taking away from your book, Terraform, which really cool way to talk about like building a world, like thinking science. Honestly, science fiction. I mean, we were on the cusp of it. I don't know, but I mean, it's looking like we're gonna need to do some work here before we worry about out there, which is, I mean, kind of the idea too. But a lot of it about telling a story, right? Because what you just did there, it's recontextualizing the story of Scripture, of Proverbs, and things like that. And so we're telling the truth of it versus whitewashing it. And from your point of view, can you talk a little bit about the power of an honest story, like a true narrative?
Yeah, I think that it's the very identity, like your own self-talk, with who you see in the mirror, and then in turn how you interface with the world, whether you want to admit it or not, is a product of the collection of stories that you are. Like, using a biblical example, like we are, our starting point, if you're going to have a biblical worldview, is Imago Dei. You're made in the image of God, and fearfully and wonderfully made. Before you were in the womb, I knew you. So if these are the things, these are things we're telling ourselves, that God in heaven, like, put you together, sewed up your sinews, you know what I'm saying? And when you're in your inner parts while you were still in your mother's womb, then you've just placed such a value on the human life and the human existence, that from that springboard, you should be able to look in yourself in the face and look at the person across from you and say, that person's made in the image of God, fearfully and wonderfully made. How could I possibly take this person's life? How could I possibly, you know what I'm saying? Because of the stories you were told yourselves. Now, bring that something that's like not so lofty, maybe what makes us American. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, there are origin stories. We think that, like, our poo-poo don't stink, and that we're somehow, you know what I'm saying, exceptional from every
destiny.
other. Yeah, this was our destiny. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what are you talking about? This land was given to us by God, and it is our destiny to do this. And you just have to go subdue the land, and just you go take it because it's yours for the taking, which would mean that those that are actually on the land already, it's not their destiny.
Yeah.
And
they're condemned by God in some way.
Yeah. And they are condemned by God. You know what I'm saying? So,
and you make up stories to make that work in your brain.
You gotta, that math ain't mathing. You know what I'm saying? Unless you make it math. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if you make it math, then a genocide is not a problem.
Yeah, you cook those books.
Yeah, you cook them. Yeah. Then a genocide's not a problem. You know what I'm saying? Or like, if a person is poor, it's because, well, we live in America. If you work hard, you succeed. If you poor, it's because you didn't work hard.
Yeah, meritocracy.
You know what I'm saying? And it's the meritocracy. We all know that's absurd. You sat in an office with somebody whose uncle works in the C-suite, and you're like, this person is completely incompetent, but makes more than me. Yeah. That's absurd. And it's only because he know that person. So don't, like, that's not true. You know what I'm saying? So, but we still break our necks, work 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, you know what I'm saying? 12-hour days, because we just believe. That's why we stressed out. That's why we overwork, because we believe these stories we've told ourselves.
Yeah. So I think that's it's interesting that when we bring it to the nation and telling a healthier nation story, that's such a big topic right now, right? There's a huge struggle, all the crazy struggle on CRT and stuff in schools and everything. It's like people are averse to changing their false narrative about the origin story of the nation that's rosy to a one that isn't rosy, that's ugly in some ways, complicated, nuanced, but truer. And so, like, when we think about terraforming, how does seeing a story, an origin story, even if it's uglier, like seeing the truth of an uglier origin story, actually necessary for building a better world?
Man, that's a great question, man, because it's like, because the world you've built, not only around you, or the world you've built for yourself, you know, which is really like is your identity. And I think the pushback is like, it's not so much that I'm asking you to like face the facts of our nation's history, like, and in turn, I think at a subconscious level, I'm asking you to reform your identity. Is that everything you think about yourself that springs from this is now wrong, and that's terrifying.
Yes. Yeah,
you know what I'm
saying? Like, that's why people feel that
story.
That's why people feel attacked when you start talking about that.
You feel personally attacked when I go, well, that's not at all what happened. You know what I'm saying? You're like, well,
what are you saying? Like, am I bad?
And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, but you were the whole time. You was the only one deceived about it. You know what I'm saying?
It's not your fault.
That's not your fault. It's just because you've been told bad stories. But there is, if you're willing to go ahead and face the abyss, look at the ugliness, then you'll find there is beauty there. There is redemption there, and it's not a false redemption because you've looked at the ugly. You know what I'm saying? And that's the part that I feel like if you just get to the other side of it, if anybody's in, you know, if you ever been in a relationship, you know what I'm saying, and like maybe you know you've been lying to your significant other for a while, and you're just like, the idea of actually saying the truth right now, you're like, well, it's gonna destroy them, and you know, they let them have a little thing, and I'll just keep this to myself, and it's eating you inside because you know that your relationship ain't real. You know what I'm saying? But it's because it's the dread of going through it. But if you just take that bath, you know what I'm saying? Because it's really what your relationship is. You know what I'm saying? That's really what's going on. So if you let yourself go through it, and on the other end, if you and your loved one are able to get through that other end, then what you have now is way more beautiful than what you had before when you were just lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Man.
If we could just get people who understand all of that when you talk about the identity of sinner saved by grace, to import that understanding to the identity of, hey, if you really face the truth of the nation, redemption, like, Tulip people should get this.
I don't understand why they don't. Like, why you don't understand a systemic problem. Like that's
baffling.
That's your first two chapters. Your Bible is explaining systemic problems. You know what I'm saying? So
we're totally depraved, but not in that way, prop.
Yeah, but not like that though. Yeah, but like I feel like So I feel like if you'd be willing to like walk those things through, and just be like, or just the reality of like. Just be a little honest about history, period. It's like nations come and go. Nations fall. They rebuild. Like there's not one. I'm trying to think of a country in Europe that hasn't collapsed and like rebuilt itself. Like they collapse up. Nations collapse all the time.
Yeah. The Constitution is the oldest surviving governing document currently.
Yeah. And you know what? And
most collapsed since then.
Yeah, because most people realize, we should probably
we gotta reset every now and then.
We should probably reset now and then. It's like we're walking around with like an iPhone 1 talking about we got the greatest. And I'm like, yeah, maybe we were first with the first iPhone. But you know what I'm saying? They got cameras now. Like they don't even have buttons no more. Like these people have went back, but it's like, well, you know, the iPhone was the greatest smartphone in the world. Yeah, 12 years ago. It's okay to like, you know what I'm saying? People have upgraded their constitutions. They've upgraded their democracies and thought of and looked at something and went, maybe I feel like this part ain't working. So like, and then went in and made it work rather than being like, nope.
Nobody's learned anything about governing documents in over 200 years, prop. Sorry.
Yeah, these men who bathed once a month, you know what I'm saying, knew exactly what they were doing. They were prophetic. They saw the internet, knew it was coming. Like, come on, fam.
They saw
like
the internet.
Yeah, like, it's shit. Like, chill. Like, people do this all the time, you know? Anyway.
Yeah. I think that also speaks to the need for healthy terraforming, but also the issue that you brought up in Precious Puritans. And it's one of tradition. It's tradition. There's almost this dogmatic like marriage to tradition, so much so like, you know, in the Puritan times or anybody who held to a Christian theology, but could still attach themselves so deeply to tradition that they could still own a person. And we're assuming that these people had the Holy Spirit, knew the gospel, was able to articulate it well, poured themselves over the scripture, and yet the plain reading of scripture wasn't able to tell them that owning a person was bad. And I think those traditions still, the ideology of those traditions are still attached even today. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, the wisdom of just like understanding people are, no matter what they want to accept about themselves, they're still a product of their time, space, and culture. Like you can't know, like dudes that were like I say on the thing, like they were chaplains on slave ships. Like for their time, that's like the wokest thing to be. Like is to be like, these Africans are humans, in which case they need the gospel, right? That's like for their time, it's like, dang, you freaking socialist, liberal, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's communist? Progressive. You know what I mean? Sure. Because people are products of their time, you know? And as like absurd as that sounds, I understand that there are things, and if you have that perspective, have the humility to understand that, like, yo, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, Christians will be looking back at us and being like, can you actually believe they actually thought that the Bible was saying this? You know what I'm saying? Like, you believe these fools actually argued over this? Like, oh my God, these Neanderthals. Like, they're going to think of us.
I think about like, that all the time.
Yeah.
Especially
like,
now with like, social media, podcasts, like our great grandkids ostensibly can hear and see exactly what we say.
Every dumb like, thing we've said. You know what I'm saying?
Like, I want to think about, we're not going to be perfect in any way. Like,
no,
that's silly. But like, I don't want to miss something so obvious. And if I do, I want to be open when another brother or sister or someone in the world says, hey, like, what about this?
Yeah, that sounds weird, bro. Yeah. Like, yeah. And be like, huh, sure does. Yeah. So it's just like, I'm always like that about like, when we talk about like hills we die on, or like what I'm like, I have what I've dubbed for myself like an open hand theology, to where I'm like, I'm holding it, but I know I don't hold to the same things I held to 10 years ago.
Sounds very actually reformed. Like you want to kind of be always reforming and refining.
Always. What a thought. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you just afraid of the terms,
if
I'm
we
like,
made it Latin, like people might get that tattooed on themselves.
I know, right? So I'm just like, yeah, fool, have an open hand. Have the humility to understand that you see through a glass dimly. And I feel like if we do, you know what I'm saying? I think some of the silliness, you know what I'm saying, that is going to be embarrassing, you know, years from now, you're going to save yourself a little bit of embarrassment. If you just like, yo, like, hey man, like, and if you're hearing from like, you know, churches and cultures that are just older than ours, like you talk to like churches from like Ireland, they're like, look, you know how many times we've been wrong? So they're like, we just don't get into these like little beefs y'all get into, because like
to have those like dogmatic culture wars.
We just don't be getting into them because like we done been wrong.
They're killing each other in the streets, literally
over potatoes. You know what I'm talking about? Like, so like, you know, because over your sacraments, like, word, y'all don't like how you take communion. We dying. Like they're like that was terrible.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah, so we're like, maybe we should just fall back and like let's just stay humble about our thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
That I think is like a perfect bridge to when we did our 2021 year-end wrap-up, one of my top musical projects of the year was The People.
Yeah, bro. Thank you.
I'm on your text thread. I got to listen to that early.
Dope.
I was spinning the heck out of that.
Yeah, bro.
And so I've been listening to you for a long time. I don't remember. I've gone back and listened to some of the Tunnel Rat stuff, but like I've been on you for quite a while. And I've always, like when I was younger, I was like, Prop is like edgy and provocative, and he's trying to like poke at it. And like he is trying to make people think, but I like the edge. And it kind of struck me as I was listening to Terraform the People. I was like, Prop's still being provocative, but like in the 2016 and on time, his provocative message is unity is good.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one, you grow up and like you're like, hey man, being pissy all the time isn't as like cool as you think it is. When you're like a little older, you're like, dude, why like relax, bro? Like,
I'm stressing. I'm gonna like this isn't good for my health.
Yeah, I'm like, why are you so pissy all the time, man? Like, life's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So then so once you have that, like you just have a little more grace, not only for yourself, but for the people around you. And like, and then the young homies coming up. So you want to like embrace like the sage sort of like stage of your life of like, I'm still me. I'm still trying to like invoke deep thought, deep consideration, deep meditation, you know what I'm saying? But like, I have a point I'm trying to make because I have like a broader perspective now. So I think that like, and being able to deliver that perspective in a way that now reflects that I've taken a couple L's, you know what I'm saying? I've every step out wasn't a win, you know what I'm saying? So now I know like, hey, you could crash and burn, you know what I'm saying? You ain't immune either, you know what I'm saying? So you speak in a way that's like, okay, what do we need right now as a culture? We need to hear a way to say, okay, hey, listen, man, I could come at you like, you're so divisive, you're killing. It's like, well, bro, like, man, there's a better way to say these things.
That message, we need you. And I mean, the first EP, there's 4, right? Two more coming. So the first album, the first EP, Terraform, The People, all 7 or 8, 7 tracks start with we.
Yep.
And it's all about the communal aspect of humanity. One of the things that we come back to a lot on the podcast when it's ourselves or when we have guests is theology of place and like embodiment. Like doctrine is good. Bible study is good. Like spiritual disciplines are good. But God did also give us bodies that age and other people's bodies. He placed us in the families, in the socioeconomic situations, and in the geographical locations that he put us in to be faithful in a way that only we can right now. Yeah. And like that matters.
Yeah. I mean, how did you experience Christ in your body?
Exactly.
How did Christ experience the world in a body? And how are you to express the fruits of what happened to you in your soul? You express it with your body. So I'm like, I don't know how else do you play out the faith except for in your body or with other bodies or in the land that you're in? Like, I don't understand how like that. It's so important to that because I'm just like, I don't understand. It's going back to the Precious Puritans thing is like, I don't understand why this is so hard. Like how else do you have a way of experiencing Christ that's out of your body? Like how did you do that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But going like how we need everybody. And like you take shots at the things that need shots taken. But I mean, we know Entiende.
Yeah, bro.
Perfect single. I thought that was actually, I think when you send it out to the text, that was the first track. And I was like, man, he's coming in hard. But then it's like, no, the message of all of this is there needs to be healing. There needs to be, like we said, honest confession and acknowledgement of reality in history for the goal of seeing the truth so that we can be the body. Like that's Ephesians.
Yeah, because I was
so
saying
that the walls of division are torn down.
Yeah, because in Spanish, if you don't know, sorry, no entiende, it means like I don't understand. Right. So the idea what I was trying to say is like we just don't like. Have you ever been trying to explain something? It's like I feel like we don't understand each other. Like I just like I don't know. Maybe you just don't understand. You know what I'm saying? And like it's more that where you're like I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt that like you're not a monster. I'm at least start with we're not a monster. You probably just don't understand. So let me just say what I mean. Now, if you are still a monster, that's what we're addressing on like the we need you thing, where it's like, look, man, every idea ain't equal. Like I'm not gonna sit at the table and discuss the validity of my personhood. Like that's a non-negotiable, dog. Like, you know what I'm saying? Right. So there's nowhere to go with that, and if you're starting your side of this story with this person is somehow needs to prove that they have a right to exist on our planet,
like we're
then I'm like
hierarchically different. Like, no.
I'm just like, all right, we have nothing to talk about and turn this fool's mic off. You know what I'm saying? Like I do believe that, you know what I mean? But I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start with like, yo, let's try to understand each other,
And the folks who like, we talk about this too. the folks who say those things have heard them, and we talked like they believe those bad stories.
Yeah.
And with social media, not that it's easy to scapegoat social
Mhm.
media, but like it's designed to reinforce all of the
Yeah.
most egregious, emotionally provocative things
Yeah.
that make you angry, and then that gets weaponized. Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, man.
I like how you kind of almost say it jokingly. It's like we saw it coming. Like these white boys stormed the Capitol.
Yeah, I
Like,
was like, you ain't see this coming? Like, who ain't
are you surprised?
see this coming? Like, something was gonna happen. You can't rile up people like this. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What's funny too is like the lack of understanding that people demonstrated, even in reacting to that, because I think it made waves too. Like Swoop's line in there about Jesus being the blackest way possible, which to me I was just like, if you understand what that means and the relevance of that in their culture, like, yeah,
That was a big deal, man.
Like Swoop had a year last year, but that line,
He really did.
I
That
love
line,
24,
dude.
but like I think just that one bar, I was like
Yeah,
that, you
bro.
can engrave that
another
somewhere.
one.
That's,
Yeah, man. It apparently there's a pretty weird story about that. Apparently that line is in a poem that none of us had heard before. So
oh dang.
According to him, he heard the phrase. He was just at dinner with like a family friend, and she said it, and he was like, "Yo, that's dope. I'm gonna put it in a rap." And he called her and was like, "Hey, you mind? You remember what you said to me at dinner? You mind if I like put that in a rap?" She was like, "Yeah, cool, go ahead." You know what I'm saying? And she probably didn't know that she heard it from a poem.
It's just
you know what I mean?
cultural osmosis.
It's just that thing. So like, so then when it came out, like, and he was getting all this love for it, that poet and her friends like reached out, like, "Yo, you're just gonna bite an entire line?" And we were like, "What?"
And one that's good. Oh dang.
And it was like, and we're like, "Yo, wait, what? What are you talking about?" Like, and then so Fool started like linking me to the poem, and I was like, oh man, all right. So what do you need from us? Like, you want us to? I mean, I don't think I can pull the song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like, what's like? You need some like writer's credits. You know what I'm saying? And then the trail went blank. But like, yeah, like, but the bar itself was like, I mean, his whole verse to me was just like,
man. Yeah, that song definitely stays on replay for me.
Yeah, dude.
So kind of going back to the terraforming idea and like narrative being so important, I think about this because like I've been preaching sermons for a while, done stuff like that for a long time, and didactic material, you can sit in front of somebody, just like you were talking about before, you can sit in front of somebody and tell them this lesson, break it down, make it all clear for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Have them come up to you at the end and say, and they'll be like, "Pastor, say what?" Good story though. Like, hey, and then like they're literally asking you, like, "Man, I'm really struggling with this thing, and I don't know what God wants me to do." And it's like, I literally just spent the last 40 minutes explaining this.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Telling you. Yeah.
But what's interesting is like people connect to stories. You tell them a story, they remember it, they hear it, they live with it. So much of the scripture is narrative.
Yeah.
Right? The lion's share of the New Testament, you've got the Gospels and Acts, narrative.
Yeah.
The Old Testament, it's a narrative. And it's funny because, it's almost an aspect of white theology that has a hard time dealing with narrative. Like, we love Paul, we love these didactic stuff. So it is kind of interesting that, bringing up that narrative. But like, my thought is like, why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Why is it important that God revealed himself in narrative more than pretty much any other kind of way to us?
I think there's a couple ways to answer this. First of all, in reference to like the white theology thing being much more linear, I think it's a product of, it's just post-enlightenment thought. You know what I mean? Like, again, people don't want to admit that they're products of their time and their culture. It's like, we're products. We sit in the shadow of the Enlightenment.
We made the culture,
Yeah,
the culture made us back.
Yep, in the shadow of rationalism and Enlightenment, and coming up with, like you said, like, it's more didactic, like linear ways to understand and organize knowledge, because of like that rationalism and post-enlightenment era being so fascinated by the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. You know what I'm saying? Who were looking at information in that certain way. They romanticized it so much, brought it into their time now, and now we're just sitting in as a product of that, because again, just the church in America is y'all were Europeans. You know what I'm saying? So like so you're a part of that track, right? Why God chose to reveal himself, at least in scripture through narrative, has most to do with because it's written by Arabs. And I'm like, that's how they talk. You know what I'm saying? So like it like in a lot of ways it's that simple.
Just the point in time.
That's how Arabs talk. Like that's the way they communicate. You know what I'm saying? Like because the Quran's the same way. You know what I'm saying? Like any sort of cultural, you know, whether it's just an indigenous like tribal belief or, you know, even just the idea of like, you know, the sojourner and like taking care of like the traveler and hospitality, that's just Arab. Like that's what they do. You know what I'm saying?
But then why did God want that to be the culture in which his message was spread?
I mean, if I knew that, you know what I'm saying? Like, why the Lord chose that? Like, I don't know why that. I don't know why he chose them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just know he did. You know what I'm saying? So, like, so I think that, like, now having said that, I also, you know, being from sort of coming from an African and African American tradition where, like Arabs, we come from an oral history. You know what I'm saying? Sure. And so our griots, our wise men, you know what I'm saying? Just like your oracles and your prophets, like these were and understanding that your Bible is just written oral stories. Like they were oral tradition also, right? And you remember stories because it's an oral tradition.
That's what you built your whole thing on. Like that's what an MC is. You're like, that's what modern day, like you're a storyteller.
You're the like, you know, Freestyle Fellowship say the inner city griots. Like that's what we are. You know what I'm saying? So it's just the reality of like, because you find yourself in it. If I could find myself in a story, you know what I'm saying? If it's captivating, of course it'll stick because I'm in it. There's a term like academic sort of theological term, the difference between like the knife cut or the deep soak, like in the sense that the knife cut, like if I'm going to just cut my arm right here, put something in there. Yeah, that's more like, that's like the linear sort of learning. But the deep soak is like, that's like sunbathing, where it's like, it is just getting into you, right? And what story does, it's like it's sunbathing. You're sitting in it and it just seeps into you. So I can't even point. It's like, I can't point at the four, you know, the 4 points that you're trying to make it. It's just in me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you just, you know, when water in a, you know, salt, like in a salt water, when it starts dissolving, like once it's in the solution, I don't know where the salt is anymore, or I can't point at it anymore. It's just in the water. You know what I'm saying? So what story does, why, and you brought it up yourself when you, like, if you were to ask an ancient Hebrew, how does God plan to save humanity? They're going to tell you Exodus. They're going to say, well, you know what I'm saying? When we was at one point, this is like why you practice it on the Sabbath, why you do the Seder and stuff like that. It's because you're rehearsing.
They have a story to tell you.
Yeah. How God is saving the world. Yeah.
Which on the flip side is why it's so hard now to kind of deprogram some of these stories. Because the solution is kind of, and not that God can't, he does.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah, man.
Speaking of deprogramming, that's something we've been thinking about a lot, because like we've been kind of addressing this idea. We talked with a guest before on the show about how like community and belief is interrelated. Like a lot of people think, oh, I can just go in and give somebody facts and change their mind. But actually somebody's mind is kind of a contextual thing that's created. It's created by community and it creates community both ways.
Yeah.
How do you think narrative intersects with that interaction, like narrative to create belief in community?
I mean, you just said it.
Yeah.
I mean, you actually kind of nailed it. And it's like, it's to tell better origin stories. It's like, this is how we're forming our identity. You know what I mean? And it's like, whether you want to admit it or not, you're a part of a whole, you know? So I think you answered it in the question. It's like, they all interplay and they form up who we are and how we see ourselves.
Trevor does that sometimes. He's the academic in the group.
You know, when you were talking earlier about growing up with all of the head stuff, like it's kind of interesting because like for somebody who wants to go the other direction, you know, like you're talking about growing up with the orthopraxy and everything, and then like getting plopped in the space, and it's like, well, you can be here for a little bit, but don't change us. You're not exactly welcome here unless you're gonna walk it like we walk it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for all of us, and there's a lot of believers in this space now that they're trying to find a way to go the other direction. It's like, okay, how do we take all this and then, like, we were just given the head stuff.
How do we walk it out? Yeah,
we fundamentalism our entire lives. So now what? And who's doing this different? That's and it's interesting, kind of going the other direction too.
Yeah, man. And you see so much fear wrapped into that as well, because anybody who tries to go the other way and actually live it out, then it's like, is that the social justice gospel?
Personal, because like we said, because they feel like you're shooting at them personally.
Yeah,
they are wrapped up in that. Their story.
Yeah, you got these fences. These fences that create safety, when that's like, it's a false safety, but like, But if you're telling yourself that, like, I'm doing the work of the Lord, I'm protecting the gospel, I'm defending the faith, well, of course you're going to feel like, vindicated and, and charged up to like not let you step outside the fence. You know what I mean? But that fence is not, you're just creating safety for yourself. You know what I mean?
Social media will find you a tribe of people to buy your book or buy your conference ticket and tell you that, man, you're what we need now.
Yeah. They'll love it.
Yeah, that's good. Eat it up with the quickness.
Yeah. If you'll allow me one funny question. So I love all the content. Here it is. We're gonna point people to some of the stuff, and we love the content, like everything we've been talking about. As you mentioned yourself, it does get a little sweary sometimes, and so it brings up a question in my mind. I'm just curious, your theological wrestlings with, for example, Ephesians 5:4, kind of talking about,
what's your narrative on that?
No obscenity, basically. What
I love it.
How do you process through that? Because I'm sure you've thought about it.
Of course I have, and I'm about to like ruin y'all right now.
All right, let's do it.
and I feel like,
and I'm telling you, by next week you're gonna have cuss words on this show because I'm about to ruin y'all.
Okay. I hear you.
Obscene means Greek for off stage. Right. So the term just means off stage. So obscene.
Okay.
That doesn't make it wrong. It just means it needs a context. Certain things are for the stage. Certain things are for off the stage. Right. Okay. So when you talk about obscene speech, you're talking about context.
Okay.
Now, you take let no profane speech come from your mouth, but, encourage and edify each other with songs and spiritual songs. You know what I'm saying? Sing over each other words that edify. I understand that. Now, I can't think of anywhere in the Christian faith where the creating a naughty list and avoiding the naughty list somehow gets you off the hook from what God is calling you to. Right? Because now who gets to decide what was on that naughty list? And for America, we've got these 4 words that 20 years ago were 8 words. And 30 years before that was only 2, because 4 of the ones that are bad now weren't bad then, or vice versa. So as the Christian, what you're telling me is the culture has decided your vocabulary.
Sure.
So you're appealing to them as to what God is telling you can come out of your mouth, right? So there's that, right? Yeah. So they don't get to decide because they're just vowels and consonants. What God is calling us to is something greater than the avoidance of vowels and consonants, right? Because, perfect example, I don't know if any of y'all are married.
We're all married.
Dope. So my wife is a doctor. PhD,
Same.
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I can call her by her right name and her right title and be using profane speech towards her because of what I mean by it. So if I were to say, she ain't, I don't like how she done did this. I don't like the way she talked to me all day to this and this. And I was like, okay, Dr. Alma. I've torn her down. I used the right words, but I tore her down, right? So, because I know what I meant. My words were not trying to edify. I did not speak. It takes the Holy Spirit to make sure that your words, no matter what they are, are designed to edify, right? The other ones, you believe it if you want to push your balls, they're just words, right? Like, they're just words. You know what I'm saying? But if I were to look at your best friend, just like, you know what I'm saying, like, scored a winning touchdown, you like, you the man, homie. You know what I'm saying? Like, do that shit, fool. Like, I'm just so proud of you. You know what I'm saying? That, like, I just edified him. You know what I'm saying? But if he'd have, like, missed the ball and I was like, hey, look, hey, check it out. It's the star quarterback over here. Look at the star. Look at the MVP. Here's the game's MVP. Like, I'm trying to tear him down. And if you replace, you know, the F word with freak, you telling me your heart ain't in the same place? What did God already tell you about what happens in your heart?
Sure.
Right? That if you lusting over a woman in your mind, you done already committed. I ain't put it in. What are you talking about? I ain't put it in. Jesus said it don't make a difference. So for you to say darn and shoot, what make you think you not cussing? Like, you already are cussing. Yeah. It's just ineffective because you don't feel better. You didn't say what you actually meant, and you didn't really communicate what you meant. So in my mind, again, context. Do I talk like this to my child? Absolutely not, right? There are things, look, nothing wrong with driving a car. There's something wrong with my 6-year-old driving a car, right? You know what I'm saying? Nothing wrong with having sex. Something wrong with having sex in front of my children. You know what I'm saying? Because I enjoy sex. Love it. Married man. It's great. I even like talking about it, but not in every context. Because that's obscene, you know? But there is a time when we need to speak freely about it. You trying to tell me your church don't ever talk about? Yes. You mean to tell me your church don't ever talk about sex?
People don't talk.
Yeah, frankly. That's what I'm saying. Your church don't talk about sex because it's obscene, then your marriage is going to fail. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? There is a place for it. So context, right? Now knowing this stuff, go back and read the book of Ezekiel. That's one of the foulest mouths man's. Like, that book is foul. Like, the man is a potty mouth. But he's making a point because the context was important. So what you're asking of me is Ephesians chapter 5 to always speak words that are edifying. Then I would defy you to find any place in any of my body of work, cuss words or not, that I'm not edifying or that I'm not speaking with a context. So, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, no, I hear all that. Yeah. I just want to provide one quick thing, though, because I'm not talking Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4 is where a lot of people go.
Got me.
Which is...
Did I do a whole Ephesians 4 thing right now?
Yeah, which is good.
Okay.
But no, a lot of what you said applies. It's just really interesting to me that in Ephesians 5, Paul specifically calls out the word, the Greek word for obscenity, which, you know, defined as behavior that flouts social or moral standards. And to your point, I agree. I think it is contextual. And I think we do let the culture define the language that it is because we are the culture, like you say, and language is cultural. Like, of course, the language that's obscene now isn't the same as in the 1600s, and obviously isn't the same in Paul's time because he didn't speak English. So it's funny because like people will come over, like people who learn English as a second language, like for example in Kenya, you know, might learn that the S word's okay. You know, and so then they come over here, they're saying it, and it's just like they don't know. To them, it's just fine.
And because they're just phonics, you know what I mean?
But at the end of the day, like, is there behavior that flouts? Are there words that are socially like flouting standards?
That's why I go to the term obscene.
Yeah,
is why I'm saying there are some that because that is a question of what is appropriate, right? So there are things that are appropriate for the moment. So when you're saying flouting social and moral things, it's like now we have to say as defined by who, right?
Yeah.
And who gets this? Yeah, as defined by who? You understand what I'm saying? So I'm like, you know, there was a time that my skin color was socially offensive. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I can't turn that off. You know, so when you decide, so when you're thinking about in my mind that Ephesians 5 thing about context. That's what we're talking about. That's why I threw back to like Ezekiel. We're talking about what is appropriate for the moment. I would never step in your pulpit and talk like a hood politics thing. That's inappropriate. Like, that's not loving. You feel me? Like, in my mind, I love the people I'm talking to more than my vocabulary. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I asked here before we started. I was like, yo, do you cuss here? Because I love you more than these words.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because
100%.
that would be, according to Ephesians 5, I would be sinning against you.
Yeah.
And I feel like, that's why I feel like the call that God has given us, the call that Paul has given us to, is much greater than following social norms or sticking to a vocabulary list. The call that we're getting called to is to say, I need to care about this person in front of me more than I care about even my own freedoms.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And to me, it's like, that tracks with the way that he talks, period. That's what he was saying about, meat sacrifice to idols. He was like, I don't care. Like, they're not, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? But if you do, then I do.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, and that's dope. And he's like, even when he's talking about the weaker brother in the situation is the one that cares. Right?
Yeah.
So he's like, He's like, well, if you care, I mean, that's okay, word. It ain't a thing to me. I don't love that more than I love you. So I feel like, to me, if we looking at the whole thing, and especially if he's talking specifically to the Ephesians who are trying to figure out how to live in Ephesus, not only as like citizens, but as families, you know what I'm saying? As couples, like if you look at that, like, okay, as your citizen, your parental relationship, your family relationship, you know what I'm saying? And then how you interface with the world. He talking about a lot of things, you feel me, in relation to how you relate to each other in the culture.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I feel like what he's trying to say, because if he talking about the same Ephesians church that ends up in Revelations, to where he like, y'all real smart, but y'all don't love each other. You know what I'm saying? So it sounded to me like he's like, y'all in the weeds too much.
Yeah.
You need to love each other. You feel me? So I'm telling y'all specifically, man, y'all can't be talking to each other like this, man. That's not loving. You feel me? So you got to see it, to me, in its whole, like, in its whole thing. That don't mean fast forward to 2000, whatever, I can't say the B word. You know what I'm saying? That's the different thing. Now, having said that, I have chosen, I feel like I can't think of a context where the B word's appropriate. I can't think of a context where it's like, where it's loving. So so for me, I'm like, I don't use that because I just can't think of no time that's okay.
That's interesting.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's me and the homies, like maybe we're in a group text, you know what I'm saying? Okay, that's a context, but I'm doing it for the shock. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because there's an understanding, but so that's in the shock, you feel me? But like,
we understand the group text with the homies. Sometimes
the group text, like there's no
the pastoral homies.
Yeah, there's no law inside the group text, guys.
You just gotta be careful. You just gotta be careful. Gotta get the right group text.
Yeah. Group text is off limits.
Otherwise, you just get a straight line to embarrassment.
Yeah. I hope that answers your question. So what I'm saying is like, just be free, because what I'm called to is actually much more difficult than the avoidance of words.
For sure.
Interesting.
I agree on that front. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing
it sounds like just like the theology of liberty, just like we talk about as far as entertainment and alcohol and tattoos and all the other things that certain people are like, well, you can't possibly do these things. And it's like, there's freedom.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't, it's not a hill I'll die on. I'm because again, they're just words. Like I would never try to convince somebody, like, now, if you stub your toe, you know what I'm saying? It is scientifically proven to feel better, to help the pain, if you just drop the cuss word. It's just, your body needs the release. I don't know. That's just biology. You know what I'm saying? So I would be like, look, man, just turn your mic off and just scream the F word as hard as you can. I'm telling you, it helps.
Plenty of things feel good. I don't know. But
I appreciate you sharing sharing your thinking through that. That's good.
For sure.
Hey guys, this week we're sponsored by Creatively Christian. Creatively Christian is a podcast produced by Theophany Media, and it's a podcast that explores the intersection of faith and creativity. They've got fascinating guests from all sorts of disciplines. With 4 rotating hosts as your guides, you'll be inspired by film directors, writers, musicians, performers, and even a guy who builds Lego churches. That's right. Learn how to live your artistic calling with Creatively Christian Podcast as they kick off season 2 here very soon. Find the show wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube or at Theophany Media. That's TheOpenPhanyMedia.com/ccpod. That's Creatively Christian. Check them out. They've got a library of over 50 episodes. So if you're a person of faith with creative aspirations, there's some excellent stories in there from folks of all sorts of backgrounds with all sorts of accomplishments. So go check them out at Creatively Christian Podcast. And if you do, follow them online. If you like what they have to say and you reach out to them, let them know that we sent you. Now, back to the show.
Well, hey, Prop, it has been such a joy for us to have you on. You just really shared some knowledge with us, and we are super blessed. Before we let you go, segment we love to do at the end for our guest is substance shoutouts. So we just want to know, and we want our listeners to know what you've been listening to, what you've been reading, who you've been listening to, anything that's been enjoyable or edifying. Let us know what that's been.
Yeah, man. I got on this weird, well, not weird, but I just got on this like reggae kick. And I just been like going through like the old school like roots, like Capletons and Barrington Levy's. So whenever I start working, especially my workouts or when I'm cleaning the house, it's just like Jaja City, Jaja Brava, nerd, heaven up and down. Like I'm brother in Broadway. Like I've just been on this like old school. It's just been bringing me so much joy. And there's for the Christian, I'm like, you'd be surprised how much Bible is in that reggae. You know what I'm saying? Like you think Rastas are special, but listen, they know they Bible better than you. I can tell you right now. Funny story about that. I remember I was in New York and I was just walking through just like one of the parks or something, and I saw this guy that was clearly on like a street evangelism mission, you know, and he was talking to clearly this Rasta that like was just, and he was trying to like share the gospel to, and I was giggling because I'm like, that Rasta know the gospel better than you. I'll tell you that right now. Well, so anyway, so he's talking, right, and then the guy goes, so why do you think Jesus came then? The dude goes, to conquer death. I was like, bro, you need to walk away, homie. You finna embarrass yourself. That man know what he's talking about.
That man's about to save you.
Death. Yes, I was like, man, the roles are switching right now. Conquer death. I never forgot that. I was like, bro, you shut it down, homie. You need to walk away. You're finna embarrass yourself. Anyway, so I've been doing that. I read this book, kind of going back through, called I listened to it, called Why Fish Don't Exist. Yeah, Why Fish Don't Exist. Pretty crazy.
I'm about to Google that right now.
Yeah, Google it right now.
I heard someone talk about that on a podcast recently.
Yeah, it's great, dude. It's Lulu Miller. So the idea is like, if you take like a lungfish, a salmon, and a cow, and you would ask like which two animals are more closely related to each other, and I mean you would think that it'd be the salmon and the lungfish, right? But that's not the answer, because then it wouldn't be an interesting book. So but the answer is it's the lungfish and the cow. Once you get down to the organs, like the taxonomy of it all, once you understand the organs that's inside this lungfish, they have more in common with a cow than they do with a salmon. And then you can do that with pretty much every fish in the ocean. They all something else. Like, you know what I'm saying? That a whale has lungs. Okay, so that's a mammal, right? And you're like, okay, you trying to tell me an octopus and a catfish and a jellyfish are the same animal? Like, no, they're not the same animal. You know what I'm saying? They're all something else. Crustaceans, they're all something else, right? Oh. It's the equivalent of like going to a mountain and just saying every animal that lives on that mountain is the same animal.
Sure. It is just like a different mountain,
different world.
The Germans probably have a word for that.
Yeah. So it's like, well, it's so silly. It's like, well, so the only thing they have in common is that they live in water. That's the only thing they have in common. It's just their location. So anyway, the story's not about that. It's about some healing in her own life. But I really love that book, because it was just like, oh yeah, the things we call stuff, like we're just doing it for shorthand, but it's really not that.
Okay. Love that. Checking that out.
That's a great book.
That's good, man. Dope.
Yeah. So Barrington Levy and Why Fish Don't Exist.
Nice.
There it is.
Top 5 alive. You got any?
Alive?
Yeah, alive.
Top 5 alive. Pharoah Monch.
Okay.
My personal. Okay, so there's the like
personal,
personal.
favorite.
Okay, because I'm like, there's the Rushmore.
There's
that's
favorite and best for sure.
Yeah, like the J Nas Pac Big M. Like you can't argue any of those as like they're inarguable. But my personal, Pharoah Monch, Andre 3000.
Agreed.
Kendrick's on my top 5.
No shame.
Amen.
Yeah, Kendrick.
What needs to drop?
It's coming, man. From apparently, like from what I hear from like friends on the inside, like this boy got like 5 albums worth of music.
I know. That's why I'm so frustrated.
I just want to hear one of them. Like even raw. Come on.
Give me
demo.
one.
It's the like it's the Lauryn Hill. It's the Lauryn Hill phenomenon where it's just like, how do you top Miseducation?
I don't.
Yeah, it's like, and he is frustrated because he's like, I don't know how to top this, right? And some of this, and every time somebody else drops, it's his job to come fix their records. So like a lot of his ideas end up being like, well, I gotta come fix your album because you don't have no single. You know what I'm saying? So then his record gets farmed because they needed a single, you know. So anyway,
Jeez.
Yeah. So
two more.
I still think Journey big in LGB and LPG from like the Tonal Rats. I know they're like my mentors, but they're still, oh my God. They're still.
I haven't checked in on them in a minute. I need to go back and do that.
Well, I still think Journey is like probably, top 5. Let me see. And then I would say, man, the 5th is always hard, man. I really, and I know this sounds so crazy, but like old Odd Thomas.
All right.
Dude,
I know he was like one of my closest friends, but he's had multiple rap names. So like whether he was, and I can't say him because he's self-conscious about all that stuff. But like his stuff when, before he was even called Odd Thomas, like the level of rapping he was doing at that time, I'm like, I still aspire to some of that. And he's not proud of like a lot of that stuff from back then, but I'm like, you affected me in ways that he'll never really understand,
Man,
thank you.
Throw it in the chat. We won't tell anybody. We'll just go listen for ourselves. We ain't gonna put that out there.
He's an internet guru. He done scrubbed all that from the like. Trust me, it's gone. Yeah.
Well, Prop Man, thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for the shout outs and the thoughts, and honestly your work on Terraform. I'm looking forward to whenever the soil is coming.
It's a good guess.
I'm excited for 3 and 4 and for the vinyl set eventually.
I'm excited about
the vinyl
that.
set, the whole thing.
We could
y'all already know.
We could have spent a whole nother hour on institutional neighborliness.
Sheesh. Yeah, bro.
But we're gonna spare you.
But I'm already getting the text from the wife.
Yeah,
Where you
we're
at?
gonna give you back to the fam. So
thank
for
you,
sure.
Sir.
Thank you, man. We'll have to have you back some other time. We really appreciate it.
Man, thank you for having me, guys.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Well, listeners, that was Prop. As we said at the top of the episode, it's a hip hop artist.
I told you it was going to be 90 minutes, and I loved it
in so many different ways. I hope you guys enjoyed that ride as much as we did.
Man, I love talking to thoughtful dudes, especially the artists.
Sure,
the artist folks, they're my people. If you appreciate what we're doing here, want to join us and support regular Porter here, we don't have a Patreon, but what we do is the anchor link in the show notes. You can sign up for $1, $5, or $10 a month. Greatly appreciate everybody doing that. Or if monthly support is not your deal, but you really love the episode, want to throw a couple bucks our way, you can hit us up on Cash App at $the Substance Pod. Maybe still have a little extra Christmas money and really appreciated that. Throw a little bit our way there. And we appreciate everybody who does.
Visit us at www.thesubstancepod.com. There, you are going to be able to find our social links on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You'll be able to get in contact with us, and obviously, you'll be able to listen to the episodes there. There, we do have a comment section under each episode, so click on your favorite episode that you listen to, give us a comment, and we would love to interact with you on our socials and our website, thesubstancepod.com.
You can write us an email at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Give us some thoughts, interact with I mean, any of the myriad of topics that we touched on today. It was a veritable smorgasbord.
I'm glad you asked him about cursing. I was like, we're running late, but we got him here. He might as well.
I just want to know.
That was a great answer.
I just wanted to know.
I don't know if I totally buy it, but I thought it was a great answer.
Same.
Thoughtful.
And as we've already noted, I mean, 2022 is in fact the year of the voicemail. So
if we had like a regular merch pipeline, year of the voicemail would be on some shirts and hats right now.
But to buy it first, you would actually have to call our number 913-703-3883 and request one on voicemail. How cool would that be? I don't know. I just made that up right now. Now it's a thing that's on the internet.
Trevor's like, hey, Philip, I got this crazy marketing idea. You're the marketing guy. Do my idea. I was like, well, maybe we can tweet this again. No,
that's kind of our relationship on a lot of things. So like, hey, Philip, here's this crazy tweet. I'm not going to say it. You tweet it.
Trevor baits me with clever little wordings of things all the time, little barbs. He's like, and sometimes he's even as obvious as, this might make a good tweet. I don't want to take the backlash, but you don't care.
I got this acid, but I can't do it. Well, I'll do it.
I haven't thought about that in a minute. I need to rewatch Hot Rod.
That's a Hot Rod reference for anybody who knows that movie. And that's the kind of stuff you expect here on The Substance with me, one of your hosts, Trevor Aiken.
And me, Philip Marinello.
And me, Vincent Edwards.
Saying we'll see you next time
on The Substance.
See ya.
Okay, wait.
Oh, yeah.
Before you do rapid fires.
Okay.
Do y'all cuss on this podcast?
You may if you like.
Are you gonna bleep it? It's funnier if you bleep it.
We're gonna mute it.
I will bleep it. Yes.
He's got like
even if it's like terms sound. That like yeah,
I do
terms
the reverse. The reverse. Yeah.
Or if it's like it's really nothing I'm saying. It's just funny. If you're just like, man, me and my wife went to the bleep and then this bleep. Like it's like I'm not. It's a joke.
Those videos are messed up when people do this. Yeah, unnecessary censorship on YouTube.
Yeah,
those
I think they're hilarious. So I'll be like, but anyway, I just wanted to clear up that I didn't know what. Yeah, I know what. I didn't know what version, what denomination y'all was on. Right? Y'all saying, are y'all sloppy wets?
Speak,
or
and if it's
y'all sloppy wets or unforeseens. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all know. Yo. All right.
You do you.